What's the password? Welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. Brought to you by the record button.
Hello, and welcome to the GM Speakeasy. You have found your way here, and even though it's not, tabletop games are not under any sort of prohibition, I want you to come in and pull up a seat in this roof. The hearth is burning loudly, and you can join us for drink and talk as we discuss basically my favorite thing on the goddamn planet, tabletop games. I am your host, Cody, joined by my compatriot and friend...
Hi, I'm Lance.
It's Lance, everybody! A round of applause for Lance. He made it.
Yay.
So how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing particularly well. It's a very nice fall afternoon. The weather is fantastic, and there are things to be talked about that involve tabletop RPGs. Starting off, for those just joining us, if you've managed to miss episode 1 and are now jumping right into episode 2, we are a couple of dudes, like many others, who have a passion for tabletop games, and particularly we are both dungeon masters, or game masters as the broad term is described.
We're nerds.
We're nerds! Turns out.
We're just nerds.
We're nerds gone analog. Does that make us...
It's just called two nerds.
It's just called two nerds. And we are here to talk to each other and you about... Well, talk to each other and talk at you about tabletop games. And we encourage you to stick around, hang out, give it a chance, and hopefully... maybe you'll have some feedback for us in the future. We want to take questions from the audience, but today we're going to start off with a couple pieces of news that I have discovered, and I want to preface this and say that it might not be news to you, but it's news to me, and it might be news to somebody else.
It might not be new news.
Yeah, it might, especially because we don't know for sure when these episodes are going to go out.
That's true.
We don't want to date ourselves by saying exactly what and when, but recently... I don't know if you knew this. Did you know that there is now, the people at Paizo, the workers, have formed a union?
I did hear about that.
Okay. What do you know about it?
As far as I'm aware, Paizo management's been fairly receptive to it.
Yes. It was like, I think I saw a post on Reddit talking about how the workers had done. I think it was October 14th when they first announced that they were going to form a union, and like within a week, Paizo was like, "Yeah, we're going to recognize the union." So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that it's not going to cause a lot of infighting. The employees are going to have a little more representation. And honestly, more important to me, the games are still going to come out.
That's right. My understanding is that the freelancers, because Paizo relies a lot on a bunch of freelancers to do a lot of their work as well, and some of the freelancers allegedly were also in support of them, for not submitting their work or saying, "Hey, we're not going to keep working on this until you recognize the union," which has been recognized. And the workers of Paizo were, I thought this was pretty cool, but this is a personal thing. They were aided in the forming of their union by the Communication Workers of America, which is a family I come from. My dad was a part of that union.
That I didn't know, but didn't they take one of the logos from one of their, it was probably one of the Pathfinder 1 modules. It was like a Kobold Miners Union or something, and they used that as the logo on their T-shirts. I think.
That's where that comes... Yeah, I've seen it. No, it's
something
like
along those lines. Yeah, it was from a module from a Pathfinder 1, I think.
That's hilarious.
We've never played PF1, so I don't know that module exactly, but I think
their
that's
logo is like a red hand holding a mining
It's like a Kobold's Mining Union is what they took for. So, if nothing else, I was pretty delighted by that, because I thought it was a neat little... kind of call back to their previous stuff.
Yes, so congratulations to the workers at Paizo for getting their union going, and hopefully they will, work out their negotiations smoothly, and we can keep getting more of the products.
Keep making stuff. We like your stuff.
We like, well, we are not, so I just want to say that we are not being sponsored by Paizo. We just love their stuff.
I mean, I'd be willing to be sponsored by Paizo.
Paizo, give us free stuff. Anyway, some other pieces of news, which are often me just stumbling upon RPGs that I didn't know existed. I knew of the existence of a Lord of the Rings tabletop RPG. I have never played it, never read it. And there is a second edition by a different company coming out.
I mean, I guess I didn't know of an existence of it, but I guess somewhere in the back of my head I presumed that there had been. I mean, you can't take a fantasy genre or a fantasy IP of that level of popularity and have somebody have not made an RPG out of it at some point.
I think there might even be older ones that I don't know about. I'm sure some person who's in the know can probably yell at me in the comments section about it.
Yeah.
But as people are prone to do, that's fine. I can take it. I got a tough outer shell. And the One Ring Second Edition is being published by Free League. Does that ring a bell?
Not off the top of my
Does
head.
Forbidden Lands ring a bell? How about Mutant Year Zero?
Oh, I
Yes.
played the video game Mutant
or
Year Zero. I played
Alien,
Tabletop.
the Alien RPG. So Free League has been crushing it. There's another product. People love Morkborg is another one. But the One Ring Second Edition, I think, according to their Kickstarter, the product is expected to come out soon, like November 2021. I just was on their shop and you couldn't buy it yet, so I don't think it's out yet, but it's going to be out soon, and so you can expect me to read through that rule book and tell you all about it.
Oh, I'm sure. Didn't you buy that Alien RPG?
Yes, I do
Okay.
have a copy of the Alien RPG, and you can run that game both as a long campaign narrative, or they have like different rules in different parts of the book to either run it as an ongoing campaign, or you can run a single one-shot to be more like a movie, where you're pretty sure most of your characters aren't going to live.
Most of us are going to
Because I don't know if you've ever seen an Alien movie, Lance.
Spoiler alert, a lot of people die in those movies.
And I'm a big Alien fan. However, despite that, I've never played through Alien Isolation, so I feel like
haven't
I'm
either.
shooting myself in the foot
Yeah,
in the same
I've
sense.
probably got it on 2 or 3 different platforms. I just haven't actually gotten around to playing it.
So what happened was I promised Dan that I would stream it on my first playthrough, and I just don't have like the setup for that, and have been lazy and trying to figure out how to get a stream going. So that's kind of how I've crippled myself into not playing Alien Isolation, because I can't break that promise.
Yeah.
Because I am not good with horror games.
Well, I tend to do a little more poorly in the ones where you don't really have the means to defend yourself.
Oh yeah, against a biological killing machine.
Well, against anything, like any of those games where it's like, yeah, we're gonna put you in this situation, and we're giving you no weapons, no means to defend yourself. You're just gonna run and hide a lot.
Oh yeah. All right, so that's an important piece of news. The One Ring Second Edition. It does take place like 30 years before Frodo. Like
Okay.
before this, it's in between
between
the
The
Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
It is in the Third Age, so no Morgoth or anything like that. For those that are in there, Sauron's rising is still the main shtick. But the last piece of news, the reason I was asking you guys about Shadow of the Colossus before we started, is I stumbled upon another Kickstarter today called Relic. It is a indie game kickstarted right now by a group calling themselves Bandit Camp, which I thought was a pretty fun name for a tabletop games publisher. But I love the artwork for it. It's very vibrant and colorful. But I have a direct quote of many of my favorite things. They talk about what you can expect from this tabletop RPG. You can imagine, this is the direct quote right here, you can imagine Relic as the gameplay found in Shadow of the Colossus and Monster Hunter meets the mystery, wonder, and exploration of Princess Mononoke, Breath of the Wild, and Moana.
I like most of those things, if not all of them.
I watched Moana with Dan because we are men in our 30s who like animation. So
That's fair.
And I think we talked about that last episode.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it.
But so I'm actually curious about that last little tidbit. That must mean they have like decent sailing mechanics or something in their game.
Never a bad idea. A lot of games just don't do that, and some of them that do don't do it well.
But they tout you banding together to fight these just titans, these massive creatures, and they have, with the release of their core rulebook, will have one setting, but then they're also releasing 2 alternate settings at the same time.
I love this idea because there is very little that really gets more into the power fantasy of a tabletop game than being able to take down a literal giant.
Oh yeah.
Like, especially if you're building mechanics to kind of get into what Shadow of the Colossus does, where there's actual climbing mechanics to get up on the monsters and stuff like that. Because that's something
knocking
that
parts off like Monster Hunter.
Because that's something that kind of lacks when you start talking about bigger monsters in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. You just you walk up and you just hack.
Correct.
Whether you're hacking at the big toe or whatever, at the end of the day, you just walk up. You got to be next to its space, and you're hacking away. There's not a lot of built-in mechanics for scaling a giant while he's flailing around trying to attack your friends and like shanking him in the eye.
Yeah, I would say that is actually one of the albeit minor pitfalls of like HP systems, right? Because that's because it's the same with your character. You know, a barbarian at 20th level is a sack of hit points, and and your hit points don't matter until you have none of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But that's a whole thing we can talk about.
We could do a whole episode on the difference between wound systems and HP and stamina and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So I don't know if I don't have any other news. Why don't you tell me what you did recently that is tabletop related?
It has been a little bit of a dry spell, predominantly because I have been out of town the last couple of weeks.
That's
on
true.
And
You've
off.
been on vacay.
Yeah, so I haven't been
You've
around.
had one like vacay and then a second vacay, right?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I helped a buddy move halfway across the country. I don't know if it was vacation. I was mostly driving a moving truck the entire time, but
Road trip.
I wasn't around.
Yeah. That's why we didn't get to play this last week.
Yeah, but we did do, I think between the last recording and this one, we did do one session of Lancer, did we not? Did we do Pathfinder Session in there too?
We played one right after the other that week, so that would.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So
not this last Tuesday, but 2 Tuesdays
so
ago
we
was Pathfinder, and then Lancer was Wednesday.
Yeah, we had our Pathfinder session,
which was our first session of actual.
Oh yeah, because we had a couple of the party members get drugged and locked in jail, and the rest of us were sneaking around the greenhouse and.
Oh, you're talking about Pathfinder.
Pathfinder right
not Lance. So yeah, in Pathfinder. Yeah, tell me. I want to hear about Bog's experience. First of all, now that we're getting into our ongoing Pathfinder game, tell us who Bog is.
Okay.
In our current Pathfinder game, which is not set on Galarian, which is the Paizo setting.
This
it's
is
set in my
your
own
custom homebrew
my
setting.
homebrew world. But yes, a lot of the ancestry stereotypes carry over just fine.
Yeah.
So tell us about Bog.
All right. So my current Pathfinder character is a goblin thief rogue named Bog. He's an idiot. He's an idiot, but he's super fun to play, and he's actually pretty adept in combat. But he's very witty in the sense that he's always got something to say to somebody about something.
He's honestly, out of all the characters you ever played, many of them are just real grim, dark.
I do. I play a lot of edgelord characters for some reason,
Yeah.
and Bog is absolutely the antithesis of that.
Yeah, we've got Roland, we've got Space Roland, we've got Mercenary Roland 2.0, but now you've played Bog. You're doing a funny voice, which is always amusing, and you're thinking differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bog is. I don't want to call him an expendable character because I would be absolutely miserable if I lost him. But in order for me to roleplay him correctly, I have to roleplay him as if I don't care as much about his survival as I do for some of my other characters, because he just doesn't have that level of like
self-preservation
and tactical thought. You know,
true.
my warlock in 5e was a very tactical thinker. Everything he did.
Aram
was a very 3 moves ahead kind of guy. Bog is like a 2 moves behind kind of guy. He's not planning for anything.
And that's actually part of today's main topic is 5e and Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So we can talk about Aram a little bit later, because that's the guy you've experienced the most in 5e. But so what happened to Bog in this last session that we played?
Hey, Bog didn't do too bad that last session. He was.
There was a lot of hijinks.
Yeah, there was a lot of hijinks. We
breaking
ended
into
up,
the greenhouse.
Yeah, we ended up in the previous session. We were on this. We're running like a pirate campaign, and we kind of ended up on this island. And on the island, there's a magic academy there. So
it's an academy that also has magical classes.
Yeah, Bog wouldn't know the difference.
That's true. Yeah, you summed it up.
And so we're there, and we find out there's some hijinks going on, or at least we suspect there's some hijinks going on.
There's some cloak and dagger bullcrap.
And as is very typical in our group and very ill-advised in tabletop gaming, we separated the party.
Rule 1 is meant to be broken.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, the hijinks that ensue almost always make it worthwhile from a fun perspective, but it's just a really easy way to get killed. So we had our monk and our barbarian. They kind of went off on their own, got themselves in some trouble, and ended up drugged and put in a prison cell underneath the...
In the bowels of some secret bowels below the library.
There's like a series of tunnels or something underneath this university, this college, and underneath the library there's something going on. Weird cultist looking people. We haven't entirely gotten to the bottom of it. I'm looking forward to getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, that'll be the start of the next session next Tuesday.
And then our bard, who apparently has no stealth skills at all, thought it would be funny to... No, it wasn't the bard. That was the alchemist.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, they were the ones that both started this.
Yeah,
We're trying to
medic.
sneak, and neither of them are particularly good at it. And for some reason, they didn't immediately go get the rogue to do it for them, because that's one of the things Bog's actually good at. And
in true fashion, your plan did not survive contact with the enemy.
it never does.
The fecal matter hit the proverbial spinny thing.
It did. But we ended up. We recruited that guardian of nature that was running the.
Yeah, the spider lady.
Spider lady. That's right. That was creepy.
She's a lady that's part spider.
Yeah.
Or is she a spider? Is she half spider, half lady, half?
I don't know. I mean, I thought she was a witch, and you know how Bog feels about witches.
Bog yeah.
I don't like witches.
That's going to be my favorite thing to exploit about Bog is
his deathly fear of witches.
Yeah,
he doesn't understand witches. He thinks he knows what they are, and he's horrified of them.
Yeah. And so, like...
That started out as a joke in, like, the Bog 1.0 from one of our previous sessions.
The Bog who did die in our buddy's game.
Plaguestone.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh,
yes. Worst.
The adventure path. Because that was, I believe, the first adventure path Paizo wrote.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite...
That thing is so overtuned.
They didn't quite catch the math yet.
Yeah.
And it's pretty deadly. I often see posts on the Pathfinder 2E subreddit saying, hey, is Age of Ashes just really difficult? And I see that, I think, like every other week.
Yeah, I mean... You shouldn't be shoveling persistent damage at your characters at that early a level.
Disclaimer: I was a player in that game, not running it.
No, I'm not blaming. When I say you shouldn't be, what I mean is, as a GM, generally speaking,
they don't know that
you should not be hucking persistent damage at level 1 characters.
Ooh, that's a thing we can talk about.
Persistent.
Persistent
my
damage.
least favorite part of the Pathfinder system.
Yeah,
the fact that even when you're dying, your persistent damage just murders you faster.
Oh yes.
I mean, well, it makes sense. It's not fun.
It's not fun. All right, so heck, the only things I did this last week for tabletop things was continue to flesh out that campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I decided I had time because you guys did not have time to engage in that combat, which I honestly wasn't expecting that you guys would get to in such a fashion where two of your party members are locked in a cell right now. Behind bars and weaponless, which is not a problem for Hung because he's a monk.
I can get him out of there in 1 turn, I think. as long as because it's two actions to lockpick, and as long as my movement will get me to the door in 1 action, I should be able to technically get them out of there in 1 turn.
You could maybe.
I mean, it depends on the distance. I don't know exactly how far I am from the cage.
We'll see. All right, so. I think that's all. Heck, that's all I did.
We did a little bit of Lancer that week, too.
That's true. We did play Lancer.
We started a new Lancer campaign. This one to be a little more permanent than our test run last time.
Correct. And this is just with 4 people. So
yeah, we dialed down the number of players, predominantly because it's a new system. It's a little bit slower, and we're taking some time to adjust to the new rule set. But I really enjoyed it. I got to resurrect one of my old Shadowrun characters as a mech pilot and Lancer instead of a Shadowrunner.
So now that you've played both like a test session of Lancer and through the first session, how do you feel about it as a system?
I like it. I do, but I mean, I tend to fall into that category of people who I like it when the combat system is very gamey and kind of technical.
Oh, yeah.
Because in my head, I can kind of separate the role-playing section from the combat section to enough of a degree that because honestly, it does that very... It's very clear in the Lancer group that it's here's narrative play and here is mech combat. Yeah, those...
You only roll... Well, you don't even roll initiative. You only have an initiative order in mech combat.
Yeah, everything else is handled simple roll and target number system. I want to beat this guy up. Okay, roll. You either succeeded or you didn't. If you didn't, you probably took damage. If you did, he's probably out cold.
And speaking of that system, which... I should point out, now that I have read through at least the intro to all 3 of them, I now understand that Shadow of the Demon Lord came first, and that is, we talked about Asunder last time. That is obviously using the Shadow of the Demon Lord system, but then you look at Lancer, and it has 4 attributes. The target numbers are very similar. You roll a d20 and d6s for accuracy and difficulty, like Boons and Banes. It's very much inspired by Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Was it the same company that made all of them?
No.
Okay.
No. So it's kind of like an open gaming license kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Where Shadow the Demon Lord came out, and then someone else made Asunder, and then the guy who he's got a webcomic that I started reading. It's actually super badass, called Kill 6 Billion Demons, is what it's called, and it's
that is a goal.
Yeah, you can get actual, I think, trade paperbacks of it, or you can just go to the website. But the guy that authored that is the one who created created Lancer as well.
Yeah, I think the thing I like most about Lancer is it's not a fantasy setting. It's just it's nice to have a second game that scratches a different kind of itch. It's not because I don't love fantasy settings, but I mean we've done it where we've been running concurrent fantasy games in either like different settings or you know what I mean?
Different systems, different settings, different GM.
It is kind of a nice change of pace to have a sci-fi setting in there. So, you know, one day I'm playing fantasy, the next day that I'm playing a sci-fi setting, and it kind of scratches an itch. I guess.
Tickles both fancies.
Exactly.
All right. So why don't you tell us what we're drinking today? Well, first of all, what are you drinking? It's going to be we're kind of boring today, huh?
Yeah, I brought a little bit of a local cocoa espresso milk stout with me. This is actually a very good beer for me to pick because I knew what I was getting into when I walked into it. I mean, I've drank gallons, if not, you know, like I've drank a lot of this beer in my life.
Yeah,
it's in my top 3 most favorites of all time.
One could say you like it. No, but you brought a 6-pack of this stout, and I brought 2 different stouts. We're just drinking stout today.
Yep. Well, you know, in defense of it, it's getting colder, and winter is a better stout season.
It is.
You know, it's a lot easier to drink like an unfiltered wheat beer in the summertime.
Given the current exact part of the year, you'd think one of us might have had a cider.
Yeah, I don't do ciders. An Oktoberfest would have been an acceptable answer this time of year.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so we are now going to jump into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. And you wanna summarize it, preface it a little? What are we talking about today, Lance?
Let me crack another one real quick.
There you go.
Today,
crack open the open segment. Yeah.
So, for the open segment, we are going to talk about our transition from 5e to Pathfinder. We'd kind of alluded to that at the in the last episode, and we decided, mostly for time, that, you know, if we decided to get into this, we'd be running a 2-hour episode, and I don't think any of you guys have time for that, so...
Oh, God.
So now we're going to talk about kind of our transition from 5th edition to Pathfinder. Do we want to start with kind of the first Pathfinder experience, or do you just want to roll right into what we were doing in 5e and then why we just switched over?
I'm going to hedge our bets a little bit here.
Okay.
First, I'm going to say every system has pros and cons to it, and I do have a deep enjoyment of 5e. I love it as a system, and we have many wonderful memories attached to it. No system is perfect, not even Pathfinder 2. It all has to do with the goals of your group. What's the experience you want,
That's
right?
fair. I mean, and we touched on this last time, too. The thing that I like most about 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is it's a very low cost of entry system, as far as headspace. I mean, it's a very easy system to learn.
Yeah, for the players.
Yeah, well, I mean, even for the dungeon master too.
I have an argument against that.
Okay,
actually.
go ahead. I'd like to hear it.
So let's go through let's start with pros. Tell me, you finish. Sorry for interrupting. Tell me all your pros about 5e.
My biggest pro for 5e is that it is a very simple system. There's and this is kind of both a pro and a con, but it really depends on where you land on how much brain power you want to dedicate to tabletop gaming. And if you're doing it for something to relax, then I think 5e is great, because your class race combinations all come out relatively cookie cutter. I mean, there's only so much variation you can do. You've got a handful of races to pick from. You got 12 classes to pick from. Each of those classes, depending on how many splat books you have, is going to have a number of variants to them, but there's going to be certain core abilities throughout every all rogues are going to have a certain list of things.
Yes.
No matter what your rogue subclass is, which would also give you other list of things. But there's just like certain abilities all rogues get, and certain abilities all wizards get, and certain abilities all barbarians get.
And so on and so forth. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's a simple system to wrap your head around. I think combat is fairly simple once you break through understanding the difference between like an action and a bonus action, which for some reason some people tend to struggle with quite a bit.
Yes, it's actually. I think bonus actions are actually something that they will probably change. That's going to be
that's going to be one of the new additions?
Because for some people it just clicks right away, and then for some people it's like, wait, so if their class doesn't give them a bonus action, they're like, so what can I do as a bonus action? Oh,
nothing.
It turns out it's nothing. Turns out you don't get to do anything.
I know when I would design a character, I was always looking through different abilities and feats and spells and things like that, trying to figure out how I could always have a use for my primary action, my bonus action, and my reaction, just in case. Like, just wanted to make sure that I had all those bases covered, because like you said, there's some classes that their abilities, their bonus action stuff is so limited or really virtually non-existent to such a degree, which that's something Pathfinder does a lot better with their 3-action system, but we'll probably get to talking about that when we get into the pros of Pathfinder.
I think that's one of the biggest pros of Pathfinder.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So now tell me what you don't. I'll do my 5e pros now. So like you said, you said it's incredibly simple, right? Is that what I heard you say that?
Yep.
I would say that it's incredibly simple as far as crunchy systems go. Because there are much simpler systems out there than 5e. If you just want to play a generic like fantasy game, you can pick up GURPS or Savage Worlds and do a lot easier than 5e, right? Because there are still these interesting rules interactions that we would learn about in 5e like years after still playing, right? Whereas in simpler systems don't have that. There are much lighter systems out there. So I would say, as far as things that qualify as having rules crunch, it is among the simplest of them.
That's probably a fair statement. I think anything too much simpler than 5e would probably bore me, because I do need a certain amount of depth to it.
So there is that. Advantage is pretty simple. You don't have to track floating bonuses or penalties. So rather than say, oh, I have a +1 from this, I have a -1 from that, it's just you either have disadvantage or you have advantage. And no amount of one or the other. It's not like Lancer, where if you have 3 accuracy and 2 difficulty, you have 1 accuracy. It's just, if you have 4 sources of advantage and 1 source of disadvantage, you just have neither, right? It's super easy. For those who maybe have never played 5e, advantage is a system where you just roll 2 d20s and take the higher result, disadvantage being the opposite. Another benefit of 5e is, because it's so gosh dang popular, there are tons and tons of online resources, third-party material, homebrew content. There is literally, like, I could fill up a thumb drive with all the stuff.
I'll be honest, I don't know, at this point, you've added so much homebrew stuff to your 5th edition folder.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
As options.
Yeah, right? As options, but I'm just saying, I'm not sure where 5th edition begins and where the homebrew starts. You know what I mean? Or where 5th edition ends and where the homebrew starts. Which is really a testament to how good a lot of the homebrew is. It's that it is so seamlessly put together that you can squeak that right into a 5e campaign and you don't even know you changed anything.
Yeah, a lot of the times you put in a new class that scratches an itch that the core rulebook classes don't.
Yep.
And or for example, the the 4 Elements monk.
4 Elements monk, yeah. If you want to play Avatar, do that.
Yeah, the 4 Elements monk, which as book rules, a lot of people found lackluster. Or ever since the game came out in 2014, that's when 5e was published, I believe. Ever since then, constantly, people have been trying to reinvent the Ranger.
It's funny because we start talking about that, and after you talked about the 4 Elements monk, the first thing I came to those was use something other than the Book Ranger. Nobody's happy with the Book Ranger. I'm sorry, Wizards, but nobody likes your Book Ranger. Okay,
I know we haven't played it since, but Tasha's Cauldron, whenever that came out, that had more options.
Did it? Okay,
yeah, it did change some.
Maybe you guys fixed it. And if you did, thanks, and if you didn't, at least thanks for trying. But realistically, I'm just saying, like,
gave it an effort.
The Book Ranger in the 5e core rules. I will admit I've never played a Ranger, so I can't attest to whether or not it's good or bad. But what I can tell you is that nobody liked the Book Ranger.
It left a lot to be desired compared to other classes. A lot of people play it and they just enjoy it just fine. But I think that I felt it. When we first played, I just felt like there was something.
I think a lot of people would just make fighter archers because it was just better.
Yeah, that's honestly true. If you're just trying to shoot a bow really good for DPR, then you just play a fighter. And then it involves a lot of buying into knowing what the book ranger does, buying into what the campaign is going to be, because it's like, oh, we're going to be fighting giants and elementals. You don't pick orcs as your favorite enemy, right? But so it involves some extra footwork to make sure that your stuff is going to be relevant with the normal book ranger. But that said, I've seen dozens of ranger homebrews. Some of them are really good. There's actually a small subreddit called D&D 5e Community Ranger, where people are just working together to build a better ranger.
One of the things, one of the kind of third party materials, the kind of extra stuff that I really liked, and this is because I very heavily leaned into playing a warlock as my first character.
You did, yes.
And the extra spell books are so good.
Oh yeah. Oh, like all the
third party like spell materials.
Yeah.
So I mean, and not all, I don't know that I would say all of it is balanced, and you're definitely going to want your GM to look through it and give you permission to use these things.
Yes.
But I mean, there is a lot of really good material in there to use.
There is. Another thing 5th edition does really well is, like you said, for new players. So you've played Shadowrun, you've played Deadlands, Lance, have you not? Yes. Know that it's possible in some systems to come out of character creation and suck.
Yes.
Yeah. In 5e, that's almost impossible.
Yeah. Even if you walk into 5e having no idea what you're doing, the book will tell you what your class's core stat is. So unless you punt your core stat, which is, at that point, it's your own fault. I mean, let's be realistic. If the book says, hey, as a warlock, you're going to need charisma, and then you come in with like an 8 for charisma, you did that to yourself. That's not poor design. That's you.
Yeah, you missed an important key stat in your class's entry. It says it right there. You know.
Yeah.
They say, hey, if you're going to make this class, you should have this as your highest stat. There's a recommendation
under the
right
class,
in the player's handbook.
Under the class, there's even a quick rules where it just says, okay, this is what you assign for your stats. Take this background, take this, good you go. Done.
Yeah, pick this leather over the cloth.
Yep.
You know, here's a dagger.
Done.
Get out there and serve your patron.
And I guess to that, that point, character creation is very simple too.
It is.
Which is very nice because we have friends that do not like character creation at all. It is just like, for them, that is the worst thing ever.
I love Dan, but you have to hold his hand.
Yeah, he loves playing the games. He is fantastic at role playing. I haven't found a character creation system to date that he likes.
Oh, no. God, what did we play that he, I think when we did Stars Without Number, I remember him saying, I took a mental note of it, I think it was Stars Without Number, he's like, wow, I actually kind of liked that character creation.
Okay, well, we found one then.
We found one. We got one on the books.
Bear in mind that this is a dude that I've been gaming with for 2 decades or more, 2.5 decades,
you've known him
really
since
long
you
time.
were a child, so that's like 100 years ago.
We've been best friends since 3rd grade, so I mean, basically when I started playing games, he started playing games, and I have yet to find a character creation. I used to make his characters for him in Shadowrun.
You did.
He'd just give me a concept, and I'd run the numbers myself because it was easier.
It's like he's just lazy.
Well, he's there to play. He's not
there to play.
He's not there to do math.
He's not there to do homework, which sometimes I ask of you people.
Yep.
So the last couple things I have as big notes is that many things are streamlined compared to older editions, and then 5e's strengths, it gives the GM a lot of the caveat. It's you rely on the GM for many final rules decisions. So what don't you like about 5e?
What don't I like about 5e? I think part of that simplicity is a thing that I don't like.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, the simplicity's great when you want the simplicity, but when you can make 10 different rogues, for example, and they're all going to be pretty close to the same mechanically when things shake out. The exception maybe would be like Arcane Trickster, who's going to have some spells to him. But I mean,
a third caster.
Yeah, but I mean, like when you're talking about the difference in variance between races and classes and subclasses, most of your classes are going to come out pretty close to the same with just a few little tweaks. Whereas a lot of the other systems, Pathfinder included, even though it's a system that you choose a race and you choose a class and you choose a subclass, the way that it's designed kind of forces you into making a number of decisions that is going to really widen that net of what characters can look like, no matter how. Like you could have, 5 different rogues in a party, and they'd all come out very different with very different abilities.
Oh yeah.
If you did the same thing in 5e, you wouldn't get that. It would feel very cookie cutter. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing.
And it's important to note that while that is true, they did succeed with 5e in making a game where it's hard to break the game.
Yeah.
So that's a positive note in 5e's favor, because I've never played 3.5 or Pathfinder 1 or 3rd edition, but in those systems you could really create some just stupid characters. I think I remember hearing, and it's still possible to do in 5e, but it's really specific scenarios. It involves multi-classing a lot of the time, which is technically an optional rule. It's technically as our feats are technically an optional rule. Not that everyone uses feats. Let's get real.
Who wouldn't? I mean, why wouldn't you? That's one of the few things that you can use to add a substantial amount of variety to a character. 5e.
All right, so I'm gonna run through my list of cons pretty quick here.
Okay.
The encounter building mechanics are a freaking joke. I don't know if you haven't run a whole lot of 5e, and I'm gonna tell you right now.
I know what you're talking about when you're talking about like the CR,
the challenge rating.
Yeah,
it's bullcrap, dude.
I kind of agree. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, pretty much every encounter I build for, and this is even before you guys had overpowered magic items and stuff. I'm talking about even like levels 8. Just at any point in the game past level 5 when you guys have multi-attack, a lot of the time everything weighs on the dangerous to deadly side, and I've run so many quote unquote deadly encounters to have you guys just wipe the frickin' floor with them.
Plow right through them.
Yeah, and it's like, sure, you guys are having fun, but at some point I want you to feel the drama of tension, like maybe something bad will actually happen to you.
There's no threat of death here.
Yeah, so a lot of the time for people, and I know that there's people that are going to listen to this, if you run 5e, I know you've done this, you have adjusted monster hit points on the fly. You've given them more or less HP to balance the counter mid-combat, and that is technically a form of fudging. Would you agree?
I was going to say, if you're a GM and you haven't had to fudge numbers during a game, you're probably not doing it right. I mean, there's just... Because there's you have to keep the game fun.
You do have to keep the game fun.
And players will get bored if the encounters you have, if they say that they're a deadly encounter and they're just steamrolling everything anyway, eventually you're going to have to ratchet it up. And if that means giving a monster an extra 25 HP on the fly above what they had it on your sheet when you started, that's what it's going to need to be. You need to do that to make it fun. Now, if you're overpowering your monsters just to murder your players, well, that's the flip side of the coin.
Yeah, well,
don't be that guy.
That's the troublemaker GM you hear nightmares about.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes
they're in it to win.
Sometimes you need to make things just a little bit harder to keep the players interested.
Yep. Well, that's definitely true in some systems, and especially in 5th edition. And especially in 5th edition. Because you guys have been in scenarios where Ulrich runs up with Divine Smite and crits, because you can choose to Divine Smite after you have rolled, right? And then he sees the number on the die, and he's like, I'm going to Divine Smite. And he is now rolling, like, 8d8 on top of whatever he already had. And so the monster is just getting melted. And that said, Paladins in 5th edition are designed around that burst damage, but it's just so unpredictable.
Well, it doesn't help that he's 2 levels ahead of all the rest of us, because you let him play with the Deck of Many Things.
That did not... I'm talking about even before the Deck of Many Things. For those who don't know, I'm gonna look right at Producer Man. The Deck of Many Things is a magic item, classic in D&D, that you introduce into your campaign if you have stopped giving a crap, or you just want to sow chaos, because it is a tarot deck that you draw from, and amazing things or terrible things can happen to your players, including just dying on the spot or getting their wishes granted,
or just getting an extra 50,000 XP.
Yes, getting an extra 50 grand of XP. I think at the current level in 5th edition, the 50 grand difference means he's only like a level and a half ahead of you guys now.
Well, I think I I did the math on it at one point, and I was like, we will catch up to within 1 level of him before we reach 20, but he's still going to have 1 level up on us.
Yep, no matter what. All right, so another con of 5e, few meaningful choices. You get your ancestry, your race, your ancestry, background, class, and subclass.
I mean, that's just a complicated way of saying what I said when I said that all your characters come out pretty cookie cutter no matter how you shake them.
You choose those 4 things, and then after that, there are a few minor choices. If your GM is allowing feats, you can replace your ability score improvements, the things you need to have higher numbers. If you want to be stronger, you got to use your ASI for that. Or you can take a feat. but you can't get both. You have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
If you're even allowed feats in your game. So you've got ancestry, background, class, and subclass. Beyond that, you're just choosing how to assign your ability score improvements, which most classes get 4 or 5 of them, I think.
Yeah,
Fighters
unless you're
get 2
a
more.
fighter, they get a billion
Fighters get
of them.
2 more, and then rogues get 1 more. In 5th edition. And so other than that, you're choosing spells, and you're choosing how to assign your ASIs.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
there's not a lot to it. Everything else is just baked into those choices, and you're done with those by 3rd level.
Yeah, if you want to play a D&D character over the long term that you want to feel like you have at least a little agency and control over them, you'll pick a caster. Because at least then every level you have a new spell that you get to pick from an enormous list. You can get a kind of a wide-ish variety of what you're doing with a caster just based on the fact that you're picking spells. But if you pick like a martial class or even like a 3rd caster or something like that, you're mostly playing a pretty cookie cutter gig after about level 3.
Oh, yeah. Next one. Lack of fleshed out subsystems, even as optional choices, meaning that one must rely on GM's homebrew or a third party. For example, I don't know how familiar you are with like magic item prices in 5e.
I mean, I pay what you tell me to pay, but I mostly just find them in dungeons.
There's price ranges based on the rarity of the item. So like if an item is considered very rare, it can cost anywhere between X and Y, which is a huge gap of price, and also there's a huge wide variety of usefulness in that array.
I was going to say that
huge array.
That by design just seems like a bad choice because sometimes an uncommon magical item is going to be super duper duper useful.
Yeah.
And there might be like a legendary magical item or whatever the top tier is for magical items.
Yeah.
That it might be super duper rare and hard to get a hold of, but its usage is so situational that it's almost useless.
For example, there's a legendary ring in 5th edition where I think it just lets you cast on invisibility unlimitedly. But if you're fighting someone who can see invisibility, then the point is moot.
Yeah.
And so actually, in the end there, I had found a homebrew, I think it was on DriveThru RPG. Some guy had done some work to assign prices to every single item in 5th edition's official magic item library. He did the work, and he based it on a bunch of different factors. Like, the items are priced more on their usefulness and less on their rarity. Well, and so that's, in the end, that's what we were using. Is this guy had a homebrew document. I think I got it off a DriveThru, and that's what we were using. So your boots of flying cost 500 gold because he said so, not because Wizards did.
Yeah. Because boots of flying are super useful.
I would rather they have done that work. And it's the same with, like, stronghold building rules or vehicle rules. It's like they have some of these optional systems in there, but they're like half a page, maybe a page or 2. It just doesn't feel like they gave them as much attention as I would have liked.
Well, that's why
I would have rather had a fleshed out system, and as the GM had the option to change it or throw it out the window, than have it not be there at all.
I mean, that's why you got Matt Colville's.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing,
that's why Strongholds
really
and Followers did so well, because everyone wanted a fleshed out. Yeah.
Well, wasn't that the rules you used when Aaron built his little army before our entire group collapsed in on itself and he ended up in captivity?
Correct. We were starting to use some of the Strongholds and Follower rules.
Had a fortress and a freaking army.
Yeah.
Had. Past tense.
Let's see. Next thing. So some of this, like you said, double-edged sword. So I said before that some of the pros are many things are streamlined, and it relies on the GM for final rules decisions. These are my final 2 cons as well. Many things are streamlined, and many things rely on the GM for final rules decisions. You said that 5e is very easy for the players, but it's not necessarily easy for the GM, in my opinion. As someone who's been
GM'd
running
it more than I do, so you would know.
It made it easy for you guys because I was putting in the work to make it easier. You know, I did a lot of work on the side to balance things. I had to do, if I didn't have a system in place. Like, for instance, the stronghold building rules are not already in 5e. I had to, either do it myself or buy and read through and understand an entirely separate rule set. Strongholds and Followers, no, I didn't write it. Matt Colville and his team did, and they did a bang-up job. But you know what? I had to read through it and understand it, so that when you asked me, how do I do this, I had to know it.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean,
5e puts it asks a lot of the GM
Yeah.
to make the game run smoothly.
And
including, balancing encounters on the fly. I felt like I had to balance encounters on the fly to keep the drama up.
And I do agree with that, and I guess I can't speak for the other GMs, in the audience or you, but like
That's my personal experience.
Well, yeah, and I agree with it, but like at least for the reading part of it, I've probably read my Deadlands books, probably every one of them twice.
Yeah.
And I think you probably do the same thing when you get your books. You jump into those because you really have this hunger for knowledge that's in there. You do want to spend the time reading them.
Oh,
so I think
I wish I could give some of it to Dan.
that hunger to read.
Yeah.
So Pathfinder next?
Yes. Tell me what you like about Pathfinder, especially compared to 5th edition.
Okay. The first and most important thing about Pathfinder that makes it awesome. Pathfinder 2.
Yes, let's be specific.
When I say Pathfinder, I'm not talking about first edition. I've never played it.
The current edition of Pathfinder.
Yeah, the current edition of Pathfinder. Favorite thing? The 3-action system.
It's golden.
It's golden. It's so easy. It's so simple. There's no primary actions, no bonus actions. You do have reactions. Yep. But you're like on your turn, you have 3 actions.
You can spend them how you like.
Yep. Some abilities and stuff use more than 1 action. Some don't. But you always know. And once the people that are playing it understand what they're capable of, God, it makes combat so fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we start to fly.
Yep.
In 5e combat, a lot of it was, don't get me wrong, having access to, like, Path Builder, I think, it definitely...
Oh, that helps. That helps a lot.
The ability to look up rules at the click of a button definitely also helps, because it's like, oh, someone says they want to shove. Well, tell me how that works. They can just read it right off and then do it.
Technology helps. Technology helps a lot.
I also think that combat goes faster because there's no opposed rolls.
That's true. Everything is designed to basically be one roll resolution and then damage, which is very helpful. The other thing I like about it, and you're going to notice a pattern of the inverse of what I didn't like about D&D to what I like here.
Yeah.
Your characters, despite the fact that it is, you got your race and your ancestry and you got your class and your subclass, it still allows you to make legitimately unique characters. Because, every so many levels you're going to get another feat, another skill feat. It's either going to be a skill feat or a general feat or a class feat or whatever. But you have this list of them to choose from. And, as your character develops, you're going to see them differentiating off from characters of the same class as you, depending on what you're doing. My rogue, for example, he has his goblin weapon ancestry because he uses his dog slicers as a weapon, which is a choice that I made that a lot of rogues wouldn't make. And if you don't make a goblin, you don't even have the option of doing that.
Yes.
With GM's discretion.
There's GM's discretion, but there's a I can't remember if it's a human ancestry feat or a general feat where you can basically be like an orphan from another culture.
But I mean, barring that, and generally speaking, if you're not a goblin, you're not swinging dog slicers.
Not a level 1.
No. And then you have. Like when you get into your class feats and stuff like that, like I wanted to dual wield, so I took Twin Feint as one of my class feats, throughout that. And a completely different rogue could be built differently. Not only that, but I mean when you're talking about rogue subclasses, the thief rogue, they get a lot more benefit from dexterity than the other ones that also have to consider their strength as a part of their damage, which changes the entire build of your character.
Yeah. I
mean, Bog is relatively weak physically.
Oh, yeah.
He's run straight 10 across the board on his strength. And
for those that are familiar with D&D 5e, finesse weapons in Pathfinder 2, you don't attach your strength modifier to the damage you do. You use your dex for accuracy, but your damage is still based off strength. Thief Rogue in Pathfinder 2 is the only situation in the game based where your dex is also your damage, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why you picked it.
That's exactly why I picked it, so I could punt strength.
Or you could...
But he was a thief. In Bog's defense, he was designed as a thief, but the actual Thief Rogue...
But in Pathfinder, you could dump dex, play strength, and play a thug rogue.
Yeah,
because they get medium armor and they can just focus on strength and don't need nearly as much dex.
They're more like the guy that beats you up and takes your wallet, as opposed to the thief rogue, which he walks by you and then your wallet just disappears.
So we could make a party of 4 or 5 rogues, and they turn out to be based on the fact of ancestry feats exist, skill feats, and class feats, and subclass. You're gonna end up with different characters.
It just gives you a lot of variety even within the confines of the same class.
I agree. It definitely. Well, I'm not going to say that 5e doesn't give you at least a little, but I think Pathfinder does a much better job of it. You get more variety. So I'm going to ask you this to kind of sum up that situation where you're talking about these meaningful decisions. Do you think it is more fun to level up in Pathfinder 2?
I do.
Yeah, and that's because of the choices, right?
Yeah. But I also
get a feat at every level.
Yeah, but I also think your mileage may vary. I think people that don't like character creation are less predisposed to liking a system where every level requires you to make some actual decisions.
That's true. Pathfinder 2 is a little crunchier.
Character creation is... I feel like in Pathfinder 2, character creation is almost a constant, in the sense that every level you're going to have to pick 2 or 3 separate things.
That's true.
Every time that you level up. So you're always building your character in Pathfinder, which I like that. But I think some people... decision paralysis gets the better of them, where in a situation like that, 5e, once you get a level up, they're just going to tell you what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a big difference. You hit level 5 in 5e, and you're like, well, if you're a caster, cool. Now I have 3rd level spells. If you are a martial class, all right, now I can attack twice per action.
Pretty much.
In Pathfinder, level 5 is where you get your ability boost improvement, where you get to pick 4 different stats to raise up.
It's like a big ASI.
Yeah, it's a big ASI. It's a beefy ASI.
And you don't have to choose between the ASI and the feats. You get them both.
That's right. Yeah, that's a big part of it. I think that's something that Wizards should revise in their upcoming version for Dungeons & Dragons due for 2024 is having the ability to get feats in addition to. And I kind of think that they will, because I have noticed that they seem to take good ideas that other people are doing and trying to incorporate
They can't be seeing how loved Pathfinder 2 is and not thinking about incorporating some of those ideas.
I agree. So, especially if those ideas are available to you, why not take the best ideas other people are having and try and work it in somehow?
Exactly.
So what else? Pathfinder, we could talk about the balance, which is a double-edged sword in its own way, because depending on the flavor you're going for, Pathfinder 2 is very tight with its math and numbers.
Oh, yeah.
I think, I personally feel that it is easier to prepare for. I don't have to... The encounter system, I feel like it works. And I'm actually going to, right here as we're recording this, go on record, I have been inspired by some recent readings. I have to confess that I have once or twice fudged dice usually to save your guys' lives. Fudged dice to save your life in combat, or I fudged enemy health to create tension. And I hereby swear that as long as we run Pathfinder 2, that I am going to stop fudging.
Really?
Yep. Because the system works. I can build a deadly encounter and it's going to be deadly. If I build a moderate encounter, you guys are going to have a moderate experience. And we're playing a game that has dice. If I'm going to change the outcome of the dice, why am I rolling it in the first place?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I do see validity in that. We should definitely do an episode where we talk about the validity of fudging dice and the necessity for it. We just don't want to talk about that today.
No, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, we could do a whole segment on that. So,
so what are some other things you like about Pathfinder so far?
I mean, those are my big top 2. I think the balance is one of the things that I do tend to like about it. And kind of to your note about the math being as tight as it is, I think that's part of the reason that they put in the optional, what is it, the archetype, the...
Oh, you're talking about the class archetypes?
Yeah.
The free archetype.
The free archetype, there we go.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to play a more overpowered hero campaign, then you throw free archetype in there, because that's going to give your characters a whole lot of free options and powers and abilities throughout their development. And
but here's the thing, it doesn't raise your HP, and it doesn't raise your accuracy usually, and it's usually just a thing where you can get more options, right? So let's it's something that is... that's just another part of Pathfinder 2. There's all these options that you can use if you want, or you can throw them out the window if you don't want them, right?
And it is very modular, especially with some of the stuff they put in the splat books later.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the cons of Pathfinder 2e. Why don't you start? Because you've never run it, you're a player. What is your biggest con in the system?
I honestly only have one major complaint about the Pathfinder system, and that is persistent damage. And it's not the existence of persistent damage. It's not how persistent damage works.
It's kind of how it works.
Well, it is part of how it works. It is how it affects you in a dying state.
It's the most brutal mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you are getting killed by something that does persistent damage, once you get downed, it feels like you're just kind of done.
Yeah,
because you're basically losing death saves just from the every tick that happens.
Your dying condition is getting increased towards that counter of 4.
I think that is just a really rough way to do death.
And I think that it encourages the team to really band together and save your goddamn life.
It's fair.
But no, I can see why, because you're playing Bog, which is a second iteration of Bog, and what did Bog die to the first time in Age of Ashes?
Plague wolves, who infected him with whatever, and the persistent damage killed him while he was laying on the ground.
Yeah, and
that may be partially the fault of the healer that didn't bother to heal me when that was going on too. But
that's part of it. Pathfinder 2e is a more tactical system, and someone wasn't playing tactically. But that said, that's actually kind of one of the cons of Pathfinder 2 are also its strengths. It's like I said before, it's what your group is looking for. It's a more tactical game with tight numbers. I would say that people say, "Oh, it's more complex." It is, but don't let that scare you away, because it's not complex enough that the tools that are out there can't help you get through it. Like, you feel like you've learned it now, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a good system. I've learned it, and I think there's better technological tools to help you with that.
Oh yeah,
like Path Builder is just incredible.
Path Builder,
it was worth getting the full version was worth every penny.
If you are going to play Pathfinder 2, get the Path Builder app. It'll help walk you through character creation. I still think there's something to be said about reading through the book and really digesting the information, but I buy all my books physical copies. So
and you've had enough players to know some people aren't going to read the books no matter how much you ask them to.
That is correct. So for the players that aren't going to do it, get these little assistances. Do you have any other cons for Pathfinder 2?
Not.
You haven't played much of Spellcaster.
I guess maybe on a small level, and I feel like I need to dive more into casters before I make this assessment. But kind of my initial assessment is that the casters are different in a way that is very jarring if you're used to 5e casters, because they honestly lean more toward utility than they do damage.
Correct.
So if you're trying to make a blaster caster, I guess it's a lot.
You can do it, but it's still not. You're not going to do as much damage as the barbarian or the fighter.
No, you're not going to, and do not expect it to come out like a 5e wizard.
No,
you're not going to be wreck and shop like that. It's more of control, and it really feeds more into the tactical based system of the game,
especially at lower levels.
Yeah,
because you still get wish at higher level. Let's be real, the higher level spells still come a little unhinged as they always do. But in general, things are more balanced, and a lot of people that want to play a spellcaster don't want to feel balanced.
No,
they want to
feel
feel
like a god.
Yeah, essentially, you want to wield magic and summon comets, man. I get it. But in Pathfinder, it's dialed back a little bit. 5e started the progression of trying to make, marshals are linear and casters are exponential, and they tried to dial that back, and Pathfinder did a better job of doing that.
That's fair.
So for some people, that's a con, because they want to just be a god, and you can't, really.
So what are your cons?
Well, nothing. Pathfinder's perfect. Good night. I will say that it is more complex. So for the player-facing side, if you have players that are unwilling to really read the rules and digest them, it does ask you to know the mechanics even better than 5e. So I have had to do it has to do with a lot of the player-facing stuff. I have had to know other people's mechanics and classes almost a little bit better. But now, so I would say that the wall is bigger to get over the first hurdle, but once people have learned their stuff, it's easier to run.
Okay.
So there's a little bit more of an ask in the beginning, but once everyone understands what's going on, we truck through turns.
We do. It's really nice how fast those turns can go.
Yeah, and there are options to, if you're used to 5e's bounded accuracy, where your proficiency doesn't go up with your level, there is an optional rule for that in this system.
I did not know that.
Yes, it's in the Game Master's Guide, where you can remove level from your proficiency, and so that you still have a more 5e similar numbered experience.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say that the cons come from, and this is for both systems, is HP. It's once more another system. I like it, and the problem is just the type of game I want to run. I like to run games, I like to run gritty games, and HP systems are.
It's hard to be gritty with.
It's
HP.
hard to be gritty because you're either alive or you're dead. HP is binary.
It's very, very binary.
You're either up and at full fighting strength, or you're on the verge of death. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I don't see myself going back to 5e. I will gladly look at the new edition when it comes, the new version or edition, whatever they're calling it, when it comes out in 2024. But other than that, I think we're going to finish our old 5e story in Pathfinder 2. For those of you at home, I don't know, maybe you think I'm full of crap. Feel free to tell me. I'd actually love to hear more people's opinions. Maybe you agree with us, but you can reach out to us if you want to at the GM Speakeasy. It's I believe the actual email address is gmspeakeasyofficial@gmail.com.
And in the YouTube comments.
Yeah, and yes, come to the YouTube comments and let us know what you think if you were listening to us on YouTube. It's time for last call here at the GM Speakeasy, but if you want more of us, you can find us on recordbuttongroup.com, along with other shows produced by the Record Button, of which I voiced Super Mutant in the Fallout drama podcast. So if you haven't heard that, that's a lot of fun.
I didn't get invited to voice anybody there.
Well, I was hoarding it for myself.
Yeah, fair.
You can find the Record Button on Facebook and Twitter, where you can also find updates and news. Share us with your friends. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate and review. Maybe drop a comment, too. Until next time, I'm Cody.
And I'm Lance.
And this has been the Game Master Speakeasy. Please get home safe.